RAN SIM. We are an Ansys Elite channel partner, so we have to meet certain criteria to have that status, like certified engineers across all business units and different Ansys product types. We're a fully staffed engineering firm, so that includes a consulting team, a training support team, and our sales team. We serve all of the USA and Canada. If you're joining internationally, we can also get you hooked up with another partner in your region. We've won the Ansys America's Channel Partner of the Year award 2 times in 4 years. So that's for providing excellent customer service and other things. So we're pretty proud of that. And we have a really good engineering team of about 26 individuals supporting fluids, materials, structures, optics, the full suite of Ansys tools. And we're here to help you both get the tools as far as purchasing Ansys, as well as any support and continued use of it.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason Simon. I work for Ansys. My role is a director of our digital thread solutions. So these are the platform tools here at Ansys that help to manage people, process, tools, and data. Today we're going to be talking about Granta, actually Material Intelligence, and the name of the product is Granta, but specific for sustainability. So I'll kick this off here, do a few slides to kind of introduce the topic. I'll pass it over to Ben. He'll talk about materials as an avenue to sustainability, get into the next level of detail as far as how that looks within your design cycle. And then we'll do a little bit of demonstration and get into some of the challenges that we're to start us out. What is sustainability? What are we talking about when we say material intelligence for sustainability? It means different things to different people, and it's a very wide scope. And so what we can specifically address and what we're going to speak to today of these 4 pillars of sustainability, we're going to speak specifically to materials and circularity. So this is about materials management and selection, packaging, lightweighting, your regulatory compliance and risk, recycling and reuse. So this is the scope for the conversation, and this is the area that we're going to be able to impact with this solution. What's behind it? Why do you see, all industries, moving towards more sustainable products and eco-friendly products? And, one of the main reasons is the global legislation. So for many years now, there's been new legislation, more complex legislation introduced every single year. And if you're making products either here in North America or delivering them around the world, you are subject to regulatory compliance and making sure that your products don't contain restricted substances, things like that. And so you have to have a system to manage that. And so this is one of the key drivers for our customers using the solution. So this is just a slide to say, hey, all of the major organizations are putting big bogeys out there in terms of sustainability initiatives and goals. And so some of the major ones here: GM, Johnson & Johnson, Boeing, Raytheon. These are just a few of our customers and some of the goals that they've shared with us. So just as an example, but this is happening all the way, from the multi-billion-dollar companies to the companies that are in the tens of millions of revenue range. So this is kind of the main point of what our solution does, and this kind of summarizes it, in a high level way. So what the industry standard says that 80% of the environmental impact of your products is determined during the design phase. And so today there are a number of other tools out there you may be familiar with that fall into an LCA life cycle assessment category. And those tools are great to give you a report and tell you how you did, from a sustainability or eco-friendliness standpoint, and after your product's already out there. But it doesn't give you the material insights to be able to make those decisions, those sustainability decisions early in the process, and actually affect how your products are being perceived in the market from a sustainability standpoint. So what our solution does is give you that material insight. So CO2 footprint, recyclability, energy and water usage, restrictive substances. So our solution will give you these insights up front. So, for example, if you have a specific grade of aluminum, um, it will be able to give you the CO2 output for that particular grade of aluminum as it goes through the manufacturing process. You can take that grade of aluminum and compare it to another grade of aluminum that may have a lower CO2 footprint or a higher recyclability. And so this allows you to design your products with the most sustainable materials possible. This is a slide we use to give you an understanding of, what are the areas that we're impacting. And so I'm not going to go through each of these, but you can take a look, and because Ben's going to cover it later as well in a little more detail. But I assume that your companies have initiatives around this. Most of our customers are looking to do more sustainable packaging. The larger or the customers making larger products like airplanes and vehicles are very interested in lightweighting. Everybody wants to do more durable design. And there's a need to remove harmful substances and based on the regulatory compliance for specific countries. So these are all the areas that we can impact and that we work with our customers around their initiatives in these areas.
One of the things that we like to think about in terms of sustainability is that really materials are critical for sustainability. A lot of your environmental impacts and the things that kind of carry on from those concepts are related to your materials, right? In the image on the right, 80% of all product-related environmental impacts are determined during concept and design phase of a product. So choosing the material in the start implies the rest of the choices and things that you can do. And that's what the image on the right is representing, that when you think about function, shape, or manufacturing process, that's really all dictated by your materials. So yes, when you're designing something, you need to have materials be a factor in terms of which material you're going to pick to fulfill those conditions. But really, from a sustainability perspective, materials are one of the main drivers because they involve the actual getting of raw material out of the ground and processing it, which can have a very major environmental impact on your product. So next slide, please. And, there are a lot of challenges that exist on a sustainability level. Some of them can be late, where you need CO2 data when you select a material, not at the end of a product cycle, right? You want to be able to be informed about what these choices are before you get to the end and have to do a roll up, and having to do some of these late changes can cost a substantial amount of money. Maybe you have limited data and you need to understand the difference between cost, weight, and carbon footprint, and limited data on sustainability attributes for materials can lead to that being a problem. There's also the concept of traceability on a sustainability axis in terms of, if I'm adding more recycled content on my packaging, I don't necessarily have the traceability to the test data that exists on this more recycled content polymer, or I want to be able to be educated about potential regulatory risks or issues that might make my product non-compliant, something that Jason referenced earlier that we need to be able to handle and kind of have forethought into how do we address that. And so really what Granta for Material Intelligence lets us do is handle a number of these issues and really start to build the concept of a digital concept of a material, be that having sustainability reference data so that you have access to, it's comprehensive, it's trusted, being able to have compliance with legislation going counterclockwise here. So you understand when you have a bill of materials or I'm looking to potentially substitute a material, what that impact is both on a carbon footprint or product risk perspective. Also the concept to integrate with CAD, PLM, and simulation so that you can actually assign these, have that go up through your bill of materials, maintaining the data, and adding as something of an authoritative source of truth on materials so that you can know what you're picking. And the last two on selection and early stage eco assessment, we're really giving you the ability to understand from a general material level, how does my material function on a property basis for mechanical, electrical design, but also, as we're talking about here, what is the carbon footprint of my material? What is the water usage? What is the embodied energy? These are all things that are stored within the Granta environment, but you can also use them to do calculations on things like sustainability for your product. Okay, so let's talk about two indicators. So one of the hardest things to do for many organizations is to understand, well, what can I calculate? What is a metric that I can achieve? And we support this in two main ways: climate change, CO2 equivalent, and embodied energy. Climate change is basically an estimate for global warming potential, considering emissions of different gases and CO2 equivalents. This is based on an IPCC method. Now, this is essentially focused on, in our instance, what it takes to get a material out of the ground and essentially put into a point where it could be processed, so raw material generation. And then there's embodied energy, which represents the direct and indirect energy use based on cumulative energy demand method developed by EcoInvent, which is a database that we utilize to help to assess some of these things. Both of these factors are ways for you to be able to measure the environmental impact of a product that you create. And using the Granta tool, we enable you to, at an early stage, calculate for various material choices, what is this impact? If I add things like production processes, what is this impact? Even transport from different regions around the world. We are giving you this at the earliest possible stage we can in the design cycle within your CAD, your CAE, and your PLM environment, so that you can make decisions early on. And if you need to go to a full life cycle analysis later on at the end, or if that's a process that you already do, you can take and justify some of the decisions made, so you have a general idea of what this is and allow you to track how these things go. So similar to how you might track the weight of a product or the factor of safety, this is what those metrics are doing. So now we're going to talk about materials intelligence across the product development process. Essentially what we're looking at is a structured way to manage materials and integrate it within your CAD, your PLM, or your simulation solutions. So we can start by taking reference data that Ansys provides for all engineering materials, enabling you to do a material selection with trade-offs across a variety of different properties that are important to you, getting you to a list of specific alloys that might be of interest to you, or polymers. From there, you can do things like run an analysis on a bill of materials to calculate the sustainability factors like what we just talked about, but also things like compliance. Those are tools that exist inside of the Granta tool, and by enabling you to make this selection and do some of these calculations early, as we move through above at the top, the concept design and the preliminary design, we already understand how our choices are going to impact when we get further to the right, going to production and launch. So as you get more specific with your data, more specific with your information, when you move to things like simulation, you have an understanding that you've already factored in some of these decisions and you've already understood some of the choices that you made and how they're going to impact you further down the line. For instance, if we look at the part on the top, there's an additive manufacturing method for doing it, and then there's potentially a casting method for doing it. If we're looking at an early stage, not only the material, but the production method, which is something that is possible within the Granta MI environment, you can have an understanding of what are the advantages on a performance, on a cost level, but also on a sustainability level. And then finally, as you move into prototyping and testing and production and launch, you have brought all this information in, you can incorporate it into your design rules, and you can do final calculations for things like compliance or sustainability with the confidence that, you know, nothing is going to surprise you, right? Everything is going to be traceable, incorporated, and you can have made the best choice on whatever axis you need to for the product itself. So next slide, please. And really, Granta is about, you know, more than just sustainability information, as I've been referencing. The idea is to create an authoritative source of truth for materials data. If you're a data provider like those on the left within a materials engineering department, within, you know, experts or testing houses, as well as data consumers for all aspects of your organization. The real goal here is to help you to be able to understand and have access to this type of information in the way in which you need it. So that could be integrations to CAD, CAE tools, as well as PLM tools and APIs, so that you can pull this information as needed into other tools and systems that your organization uses. So we look to supplement your in-house data that you're collecting, you're gathering from suppliers through in-house testing with some of our reference databases. The ones you see on the left, Materials Universe and Advanced Materials Eco, as well as Restricted Substances, are focused on this sustainability issue. Materials Universe is a very general data set that it comes with every license of Granta that allows you to have technical, economic, as well as environmental impact data to make some of the decisions we've talked about previously. We also have a database that is connected to Material Universe. That's one level down in terms of complexity for ecological materials, called EcoInvent. It's a very reputable published source that we bring into our tools, so you have access to this information as needed, kind of however it needs to occur, and you can get down to levels of detail that may be necessary further on in your product development process. In addition to this, we have another data set that is also linked through our Material Universe database called Restricted Substances, where we track hundreds of legislations, thousands and thousands of substances and materials that are impacted by legislations across the globe. And so by managing and looking through the data inside of Granta, as well as combining it with your own proprietary data, we can establish a complete picture of the materials situation at your organization and help you to make educated choices, build traceability, and be able to innovate through your materials and property choices that you make. Next slide, please, or just advance this one out. Really, oh yeah, that's an important point. I'm sorry, Jason, can you just jump back? One of the ways in which we use the reference data is to gap fill where you might not have information. So I've worked with customers, particularly on a sustainability side, where having something that is, within the family of what you're working with is very important and hard to find from a sustainability perspective. And Granta gives that to you with every license through our Materials Universe and some of our other tools. This is a description in more detail of what we support from a sustainability perspective. So for climate change equivalent and embodied energy, we are a cradle to gate tool. So for an early stage product development process and being able to understand these decisions, what we are doing is giving you access to materials, processes, manufacturing locations, parts that may be standard, things like transistors, resistors, connectors, things that are very, very common inside of product development now, as well as transport methods. And this is enabling you to easily understand how your materials choices impact everything up throughout this stage. We also have quality indicators that give you access for age, reliability, location, and not that we're completely managing the end of life details, but inside of Granta, inside of the databases that we curate, we have end of life flags for the information and for the materials that exist, so that you can understand, hey, this material that I picked is recyclable. Oh, it's landfill. Oh, it's possible to, incinerate it and retrieve some of the energy that's embodied in it. We give you access to this data. It's just not something that's necessarily included in our sustainability tool at this time. And we think it's, important to understand that one of the hardest things, as we've mentioned, is figuring out at an early stage how my material selection, be it something that I inherited or be it something that I'm doing for my product, impacts my overall rest of my process. And that's what the Granta tool lets you do. We talked about our reference data. I've talked about that for a fair amount, but one of the most powerful things about Granta is managing your in-house data, and we enable you to add data for your own environmental impact indicators that you may have for materials that you commonly use. And this is housed not within our data, but alongside it, so that as we continue to update our data, which we will always do, adding more information for materials, for parts, more designations for them, you will be able to maintain your own and link them together. So if you have your own version of a material and you want to look at our general reference data, by bringing in your own in-house data, it lets you do this. And it's important because it helps you improve the quality of the sustainability report, right? If we have a generic version and you have a very specific version, you're able to add in this information and get a better level of clarity as to what your carbon footprint is or whatever type of metric you're looking to do. And we enable you to have things called fallback links where you can manage your properties, your maybe internal designations for the material easily and fall back to some of the generic data that we have. So why is this really important? It's because this aspect of sustainability and compliance is just one of the many use cases that Granta can fulfill. So as you're doing this, as you're building in your material models for simulation, as you're building in the assignment process through your design cycle, understanding how this impacts a weight roll-up or adding in designations, even processes to your CAD or PLM systems, you're also inherently building in the capability to run this sustainability reporting. So it's a really powerful set of tools and abilities that you can use to be able to do some of these things. And this is just kind of summarizing some of the things that you can do from a sustainability in an early design phase that is possible within the Granta system. You can assess environmental footprint of bills and materials and fill in any gaps that may have. You can access restricted substance content. So if you want to know if this material has any compliance issues that we're picking, you can see that in the very beginning. And it lets you pick materials based on technical, economic, and environmental properties. You can see this nice plot down here for climate change versus Young's modules, helping you to select the right material. There's also tools that let you curate these lists of materials, so that if you want to curate based on a project, based on an initiative, based on reducing total, purchasing is saying to us, we want to reduce the total number of vendors that we have, you can do those types of things utilizing the tools that exist in Granta, and it's building, that type of functionality alongside its use in simulation, its use in design, and its use in calculating sustainability. Okay, so this is where I was going to go through a quick demonstration. So what I'm going to do is just kind of talk through this next phase, and hopefully towards the end we can kind of gather and get access to some of these concepts or ideas in a bit better way. I think I have a demonstration embedded in a video later on that you can actually see. But one of the main and powerful functions that exists within the Granta suite is integrating within CAD, PLM, and simulation. So that's accessing all your materials directly within a CAD or PLM environment. You can publish lists of materials, you can flag sustainability metrics, and then you can take this, assign it within your CAD environment, and directly run an analysis on sustainability inside our BOM Analyzer tool. So already following best practices where you're assigning materials on the design level enables you to quickly calculate a sustainability roll-up. So Jason, if you just build out this slide, it's just going to show some of the ways in which you access inside of sustainability, inside of a PLM system like Windchill. And is there one for CAD as well, I believe, that would potentially shows? Right, and here we have it inside of a Creo environment, where if you look at that little gateway module that's appearing, not only is there materials assigned to each part in that assembly, but right in front of the designer, there's information about, in this case, things like price, recycle fraction. Is it compliant to ROHS? And when you assign the material, you bring in things like density. You could even bring in mechanical properties, but it can also be configured so that any of the properties that you need, naming conventions, some of these details can be brought in and stored on directly within the Creo model, and even synchronized to your PLM system. This is all things that are accessible within Granta, and things that we can are available out of the box and can be expanded upon as needed for your organization. And this is just a detailed dive into what this gateway looks like. We support Creo, NX, Teamcenter, and Windchill for our direct integrations to CAD and PLM tools. Once the materials are assigned, launch directly the ability to analyze this from a restricted substance or a sustainability portion. So from a designer's perspective, if it's their responsibility or not, they can assign materials, but then whoever needs to actually run the analysis or take a look at what the sustainability impact is can open up a CAD file, launch the gateway, and be able to view this actual analysis inside of the Granta suite of tools, and be able to get a report out as well. So this is an example sustainability bill of materials, and what we're looking at is essentially a drill. That's the name of this total assembly, and then you see things around the engine. And as we go down levels and levels, we see we have materials assigned. We have metal casting as the primary process. We have machining as a secondary process. We have a welding process as a joining and finishing. By assigning materials within Granta and knowing how this is going to work, you can add this information in. You can have details about how far the transit is, how much material was removed, what percentage of the surface needs to be welding, and all of those can be built in to your environmental footprint at a stage of design where nothing is necessarily finalized yet. You already know, we're in an early design cycle and we're playing through different ways to make this or trying new materials. We can do an assessment right now. We don't have to go and ask a supplier or figure out what's going on. We can make estimates and we can make decisions at this early stage and analyze what our carbon footprint is, and then potentially how things that change over the course of the project impact what this looks like. So this is a video. If you can play it and it comes along, let's walk through it. So what we're doing is just looking at one of these assemblies. In this case, there's a support bracket that's being added. You see that we have materials assigned, and we also have specifications assigned. We're just putting in the mass of each of these parts, and we're saying, what is it? It's a kilogram per part. That's what we're looking at here. And now I can go in and actually assign materials. In this case, it's a carbon steel, and this is in my bill of materials. I know what my material is. Let's say I've done, I'm adding it manually. This is something that would come automatically from CAD. I'm saying that 100% of the material is of this particular material. I can add a process to it, like what I talked about earlier. In this case, it's metal rolling and forging. And then I can add a secondary process around machining, and I can say how much as an estimated percentage is going to be removed. In this case, 20%. And I can even add a joining and finishing process in here for welding. So this is just an example of what we can create reports around sustainability, calculating this type of information, and export it in an Excel format so that you can store it, you can have access to it, and then whenever you need to be able to pull it up or look at some of the decisions that were made, it was accessible to you, and you can look at those types of information easily. So just go to the next slide. I think the next slide was going to be a demonstration. Oh, this is just walking through what the reports look like in terms of embodied energy and calculating all of those. We can run these compliance reports from within that BOM analyzer view that we showed earlier, enabling you to capture this type of information and have access to it. Okay, so let's continue on. So one of the other things we wanted to talk about, right, is we have a dedicated analytics module via Python. We understand that many of our customers want to do this type of thing in an automated or scheduled way from within their own systems, be it ERP, be it PLM. So we have access to all of these same features, all the same data and capabilities within our APIs. So you can actually pull and run and automate these jobs so that it happens daily, hourly, every 10 minutes. You can assess this and see how things are monitored or how things change over time. And this is just in detail. If you're interested, PI Granta BOM Analytics, if you go to Google and type that in, it will give you access to what the APIs are and give you helpers to learn and work with XML bill of materials that may exist. And it enables you to start to build this out or start to understand what's involved if this is something you want to pursue. And so just circling back to what Jason mentioned in the beginning, right? There's a whole host of sustainability challenges that exist, but by having an intelligent materials approach, we can help to solve them, from things like sustainability packaging to using alternative materials to reduce footprint, helping you lightweight alongside of these concepts where you can look at, does my material meet my environmental goals and also meet my weight reduction goals, helping you to design for things that are more durable, circularity to incorporate more recyclable materials or recycled fractions, concepts around restricted substances. I want to make sure that I have compliance, and being really able to make and incorporate all of these things into an environmentally friendly process and picking an environmentally material to help you to reduce things like carbon footprint over time. This is a case study talking about something that we did with Deco, where we helped them to assess alternative materials that fit criteria for price, manufacturing process, substances of concern, and sustainability early in design. And that's not including, the rest of their concerns that they had around, does the product actually meet my needs to enable it to be to enable it to work? These are all things that were incorporated early and are things that are just an inherent part of the data and ability that exists within the Granta tool. We also help them to look at how to source sustainable materials from suppliers and have confidence that this would be okay. And so what we did was we looked at a rapid early stage assessment of the CO2 footprint over the entire life of a product, and then help them make an intelligent selection using the tools that exist within Granta by comparing and understanding how their choices impact things. And this helped them to select a more sustainable material, have a 20% reduction in carbon footprint for the same product, compliance with new legislation that may come out, and also a data-driven approach for their supply chain. And one thing I want to point out, right, being able to say you had a 20% reduction in carbon footprint, it is hard sometimes to calculate what a carbon footprint is for a product or even estimate it. By using tools like Granta, we give you the ability to do that early on old designs, on new designs, so you can understand how your choices make impacts. And a quote from the sustainability project manager said, by making the right material trade-offs and knowing what we needed from our suppliers, we were able to reduce a product's CO2 footprint by 20%. So very simple, very straightforward, but also very powerful to enable you to do that. So really, it's helping you to build a vision for using materials to get to net zero. It's creating and building in this sustainability concept into early design. How do the choices I make, be it on a material or production process, give an ecological impact to my material? helping you to enable proactive data-centric decisions, optimizing a product early, also giving you access to reference data for hundreds of material properties on thousands of materials. That includes data on technical, economic, and sustainability information, and really help to fill your in-house data. In addition, we have reference databases that get very detailed when you want to go into analysis. So let's say you want to do a model that is a bit more advanced. We have reference data sets that can help you to get access to that, and especially helping you when you get into these analysis tools, identify alternatives, understand if, so having access to some of these analysis tools and information would be, giving you that data is helpful. And then really creating a framework to manage materials with one authoritative source of truth, be able to publish and curate lists that make sense, and then have sustainability be incorporated into your CAD, CAE, PLM, and ultimately up through, particularly within PLM, data federation and design simulation and those types of concepts. Next slide, please. Information around Ansys Gateway in terms of if you're looking to enable some of these workflows or talk about how to enable some of these within the cloud, we're happy to have that discussion in the sense of these tools are all enabled through cloud environments. So, building on what Ansys has built over the years in terms of giving you access to this and expanding usage and use cases, this is a great way to do it. I think that's about what I had planned for today, Jason, in terms of what we're showing.
I think we can get into the questions here. So I have a couple of them here, and the first one is, what is the difference between Granta MI and Granta Selector?
Granta Selector is a desktop application that is focused on helping you make the right materials choice. It's focused around data, so you can get access to a lot of the sustainability data that we talked about today, and there is some ability to have access to doing some light assessments of sustainability information and the reference data that we discussed, but it does not have the direct integrations into your CAD, your CAE, PLM tools. You can export material cards, but it's not going to be directly accessible, kind of like what we talked about. There also is not as much capability around restricted substances, but really Granta Selector is focused on helping you to make the right materials choices and decisions. If you're looking for managing materials data, having access to materials data, that's where Granta MI comes in. That's where we're building out this real enterprise platform solution for materials information. And that's kind of one of the pretty much the major differences between those tools.
All right, we have a couple more here. So is the MI Gateway plugin also embedded within the NX environment? You have shown the example of Creo in one of your slides.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that gateway that we showed for Creo is practically identical to the one that's in NX. I say practically because there are certain things within NX that are different in terms of what, how it needs to be launched and things like that. But the functionality is exactly the same between NX and Creo.
All right, great. There is another one here. Let me see, it's a little bit more lengthy. Let me just read this quick. Tracking upstream operations for an accurate CO2 and freshwater consumption is very hard, as it depends on which mine or which country the ore is processed in. What's the future roadmap of Granta database? How do we add supplier sustainability data on a dynamic basis in the database?
So it's a great question. So yeah, as I understand the question, it's okay, sure, the material we pick and is important, but where we got it from is also very important in terms of what's the energy mix in that country, or what are some factors that are associated with it, and then how do we bring some of our own information in, and what's the plan for it. So at this stage, we do have the ability to add where something is being manufactured, where something is being built in. We have some capabilities around where the material actually came from. There are different versions of the materials inside of the Granta system that say, hey, this material, I'm getting it from China versus I'm getting it from Brazil versus I'm getting it from the US. But as time goes on, we are going to build some more of those functionalities and features to give you a kind of idea of, okay, if I pick a material and it's from this location, it's going to be a lot more versus a lot less. We're really looking to expand upon that, and we're really looking for information about what our customers want in this regard, because we are at an early stage design phase, right? And having knowledge about where it's going to be made or manufactured, sometimes people know that, sometimes people don't. And so we include some of that right now, but knowing the level of detail that is needed is important. So I'm going to bring that feedback back and talk about it, but that is an important question. And we can do some of those things now, but it's in the plan to be able to include more around those types of activities.
Okay, great. I have a couple more here. So how user-friendly is the interface, like if you're just getting started out of Granta, and what support and training do you have available for new users?
Sure. So I'll answer the first question with the second question. So to get comfortable with using and operating the main interfaces within Granta, so for the web interface, which I apologize was not able to show, I usually can get people up and running and very familiar and started within it in an hour to be able to access and understand how to search, how to find, how to have access to that. I've done this conversation and training in even 30 minutes for use cases like around sustainability and comparing data. It's intended to be simple and easy to use. And the same thing goes for the gateway. The idea is to be as unobstructive as possible to a user's ongoing workflow. So when I have created a geometry in CAD, or I have brought up my, in engineering data portion inside of my simulation tool, I can open up the gateway, bring in the materials in CAD, assign them to the parts within the gateway window, which is a capability that exists in NX and Creo, or assign a material model to the data I'm bringing in inside of a CAE environment, and then basically not have to interact with it until I need it again. The idea is that you can have access to this early, you can get kind of trained on it, and particularly for the gateway, that usually takes me 15 minutes to a half hour to get somebody to understand what's going on there. So that is part of our training program. And when we look at a tool like MI Enterprise or really a platform tool, we have a structured deployment process where we assess what your needs are, what the use cases are, what do you need to do now versus what do you need to do in 6 months to a year, and then build out and help to deploy that, incorporating training, incorporating maybe some configurations for your particular use case. So if you're interested in starting that process and that journey with us, that's something that we're happy to do, and I do every day with Jason. So enabling you to learn and understand and then build the tool out exists. We also have, of course, dedicated Ansys support team for software issues and things that come up. That's just part of the Ansys way of incorporating with things. But yeah, there's a lot of ways to get trained. The interfaces and things around sustainability are, it's very simple and easy to use, not hard to get up to speed on what to do or how to do what you want to do, and then be able to actually use and utilize the tool.
All right, it looks like we have one more here for the session. How does the software address challenges related to the standardization and normalization of material property data for consistent analysis and comparison?
So the question is, how do we address the basically standardization of properties potentially across regions, across even different manufacturers for use and analysis? So that's a great question. The way that we approach it is that we start from a general level. In one of the databases I talked about, Material Universe, the materials that are in there, we provide a kind of general view of what that material is. It may have a high level of specificity depending on the type of material that is, but then we will include a range of what the properties are. So at that level, we're giving you a broad view of what this material is. In addition to that, we also have access to reference databases that get much more specific, much more exact in terms of properties, process, heat treatment conditions, what's the composition, so that you can start on a general level if you're at that point in your analysis, and then get more specific that you need as you need be. But jumping back to something I said earlier, this is also enabling you to bring your own information in and use the same tools to be able to bring that information into your simulation and design tools. So if you're starting from a general level, we have that solution to help provide the data. As you get more specific within our reference databases, we have access to that. If you're doing your own testing and bringing it in, you can use that as well. And then, particularly within things like Ansys Workbench or other tools we have gateways to, you don't need to create material cards or maintain a material card library anymore. You're able to just maintain the actual kind of digital concept of a material in Granta and pull out the information as needed from within your tool. So it is a great question because, there are a lot of variations that exist, material to material, particularly within metals and standardizations. They may be similar, but not the same. We also have reference databases that track standards across different countries and link them to our general versions of the material. So a great question, one that we encounter a lot. We've helped to design the tool to answer some of these and then build out information as need be.
All right, looks like we just have one more final one here. Do you guys have a minute to?
Sure.
Okay, great. Does Ansys Material Intelligence offer any tools or features for predictive modeling of material behavior? So they're like aiding in future product performance predictions?
So I'm assuming this question is potentially related to combinations of materials, or
I think what they're asking is if they want to switch between materials, is there like predictive modeling for the performance between those different materials to see if it's going to probably have the same structural integrity or some other property? That's, I think, how I interpreted this one, but we can also take this one offline too. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, if that's the question, I would say that that's more driven by your simulation process. What Granta is enabling you to do is capture and have access to and get reliable materials properties that we can supply, and it would be running in a comparison of the two simulation results, or even potentially an optimization of several materials using an Ansys tool like OptiSlang to run through a parametric analysis and figure out what the trade-offs are, or predictive modeling is for these. So we don't really do what some would call ICME. So, what is an alloy's behavior going to be? But we do enable you to, have access to this materials data so that if you run multiple analysis, or you want to see how the same analysis is, different materials affect it, you can use the Granta database to supply or build that information out.
All right, I think that made sense to me. It's more just based on the different simulations you're running too. So, all right, thanks everyone here for joining us today. And again, thanks Jason and Ben and everyone for joining us. I will be sending a recording. I'll clean it up a little bit here because I know we had a minor technical glitch, but other than that, I really appreciate everyone coming. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.